Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
All right. Yes. Good evening and welcome to this new subsection's first webinar. We are very proud to have our president, Dr. J.M.K. Murthy, with us, without whose blessings it wouldn't have seen the day of inauguration. I would like to tell you something about this subsection. It was in 2016, Chennai IN meeting, when I was speaking on meditation and brain, different structural changes, biochemical changes, molecular changes, immunological changes, and as evidenced by rest of the investigative tools. In that situation, after my talk was over, I had some 3 or 4 senior colleagues who told me, Amitabh, do you know that other factors also exist in the brain functioning and for which we have no idea? We think it is of nothing to do with brain. So that's the time when I started thinking about it, contemplating about it, and a contemplative neurology subsection was born, and which is seeing the light of the day today. Contemplative neurology is for those finest functions of the brain, which are functions of the brain, but we never had any idea about their neurological underpinnings, structural, physiological, biochemical, genetical. But now as the science is growing, we are able to see them more and more. So we want to know what is happening to them. We experience them everyday life. It's an experiential brain functioning, actually. Experiential. Like, I'll tell you, we all see people hugging each other in the event of some tragedy, unknown people hugging each other, trying to console each other. We find people lifting children or injured one. We find people laughing with each other. There are various factors in the body, various functions of the brain, which are yet to be analyzed. So this is a micro lens. Contemplative neurology is a micro lens to look into the various these functions. It is to see really what claims have been made to be verified by our scientific gadgetry investigations and scientific eye. This is Sherlock Holmes' eyes to see the various claims which are existing about the brain functioning. With that thing in mind, I was joined by very very, very eminent neurologist and my colleague, convener, I being chairman, that's Dr. Sudhi Shah, who has been helping me all throughout in my pursuit. This was my brainchild, but I tell you, he's the real nanny for getting the brainchild walking, talking. So first step would be to inaugurate this thing, for which I had the privilege of inviting Professor J.M.K. Murthy, the eminent neurologist of the country and world eminence. We are proud to have the president of IN to inaugurate this subsection. Yes, Dr. Murthy, please.
Thank you, Amitabh. I welcome on behalf of Indian Academy of Neurology all the attendees and people on the panel. Today is a great day. We have with us Sri Yogi Visionary Sadhguruji to share some of his ideas with us. It is a privilege to the neurological community. I thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time to be with us. With these few words, I hand over the mic to Amitabh.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you, Professor Murthy, sir. It is really a privilege to have your blessing. You are the sitting president of our Indian Academy of Neurology, so you are our honor. And it is really so great and so kind of you to have spared time on this Sunday evening. I also thank Dr. Amitabh Verma, the chairman of Indian Academy of Neurology, Subsection, Contemplative Neurology, who is also additionally chairman of Cognitive Neurology. I also welcome Dr. Nirmal Surya and other dignitaries from Indian Academy of Neurology. Surya is oncoming president next year, and there are a lot of other luminaries who are there. And I also welcome the audience, which is, I have been told, is a great number. People have joined on different platforms. Now, I have an honor of introducing Professor Amitabh Verma, which is a very, very difficult task because Dr. Verma, as you know, is a multifaceted personality, multi-talented personality. Currently, he is the chairman of Neuroscience Supreme Hospital, Delhi, NCR, and as I said, he is a chairman of 2 subsections of neurology. He is a man of great repute, and he has a degree of MD and DM. He has a standing of 45 years of practice of neurology. That is a professional experience. He has been the director of Senior Director of Neurology, Max Super Specialty Hospital. He is also affiliated to AIMS as a faculty, in the Apollo as a faculty, etc., etc. He has multiple talents, as I mentioned. He was a university cricketer, table tennis player, best debater, president of various doctors' association at state level, also at AIMS, also at Delhi, and is also a spiritual scripture scholar. If I go on telling about his achievements, it will take quite a while, but I may say that he had also achieved President Award as well as Lifetime Achievement Award from Neurology given by Lieutenant Governor Anil Baijal. He was the first ever neurologist to become the honorary physician to President of India. He is a corresponding fellow in American Academy of Neurology, chairman of several international and national conferences, including Parkinson's disease, Tokyo and Hong Kong, etc. So, my dear friends, without wasting my time, I have with you Professor Amitabh Verma. The flow of the program is like that, as you must have read. The first is a talk of 25 minutes by Professor Verma on I Feel Your Pain, that is neurological underpinning of empathy, compassion, etc. Then there will be contemplation with Sadhguru for about an hour, where Sadhguru will be answering some of the questions which we post to him, and we'll be also talking on neurology underpinnings. And then I'll be talking on neurobiology and spirituality of happiness. And then, if time permits, we'll have question answer. So let's have a feast of neuroscience and spirituality today. This is the first ever experiment, and I wish blessings from all of you as well as cooperation. Thank you very much. With that, Professor Amitabh Verma, please take over.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir. Good evening, my friends. Please lend me your ears, especially my very good friend, Professor Nirmal Surya. He's the one who encouraged me to go ahead. We have seen people lying on the roadside, and then, without any relation with them, we get tears in our eyes. Why? No relations. What happens to us? Why we hold their hand and they feel comforted? This is called empathy. It is perceiving, understanding, and experiencing emotional distress. It's a feeling. You feel the same pain what the other person is experiencing. That's what is the empathy is. But once you feel the pain, you don't start remaining distressed only. You want to act to help them out, to relieve the agony. And that's what is called as compassion when it happens this way. So it's a negative feeling you get yourself because of the person, and that negative feeling gets converted into a motivation and action to relieve the thing. And once you relieve them or give them comfort, you get a positive feeling. So empathy is negative feeling, compassion is a positive feeling. They have different neurological underpinnings. No doubt in literature, a lot of confusion has been there, which are misusing and interchanging the names. Now, it is like a telepathy. It's like not like a telepathy, it's a Wi-Fi. You receive the signals, how you do that and what happens to the brain. For that, we'll have to see some of these things. We must know that in clinical empathy, it has both cognitive and affective. Doctors cannot become emotionally charged. So they think about it cognitively, what is happening to them and why it is happening to them and what should be done. That's it. So empathy has a cognitive aspect and emotional aspect for all the people. Many people, non-doctors also, don't get moved that much easily, but they remain there cool and try to help people. So that's what it is. It is the skill of understanding what a patient says, feels, thinks about situation from his perspective, and physician effectively communicating this understanding to the patient. Now this connects with the patient, and this is the main patient-provider relationship. Main component is the pillar of professionalism. There is a scale to measure it. It's the Jefferson scale of physician empathy. 2040 is the scale, which I'll tell you later on. So the three types of empathies are there. We mentioned you feel the patient, a person feels the pain, observer gets the same pain or thinks about that pain. When you get the pain, you react. It's a compassion. How do you find them? How do you try to see what is happening inside the brain? By functional MRI, by resting MRI, by focal lesion studies, by VBM studies. There are special types of MRI studies within the living brain, and different structures of the brain have been found to be affected by that. This is a meta-analysis. What I'm going to tell you is a meta-analysis. This meta-analysis is of 32 studies for the coordinate-wise and 9 studies from functional magnetic resonance-wise. Somebody gets pain, so you get anti-insula, anti-cingulate cortex, or anti-insula. These are the main 2 factors, and rest of them are for the cognitive and this is for the emotional thing, and that's for cognitive and compassion. I'll show you how. Suppose this child is crying. You see that. You see the tears. So very simple. Tears are that he must be sad, wanting to help, feeling sad. But no, neurologically it doesn't happen that way. When you see a child crying, if the vision goes, there is a clear cut here, the vision comes, impulses are there, you see the crying, which is recognized by STS, superior temporal sulcus, posterior aspect of it. From there, the impulses, if their connections are there to the rostral IPL, where the mirror neurons are there. These mirror neurons get connected with the inferior frontal gyrus. There are another mirror neurons. So the previous parietal neurons, they try to see the kinesthetic aspect of the movement, and the superior temporal neurons were saying the discharge when the vision was seen, and the frontal one takes the movement into action. So here you can see from here, from the vision area to the temporal area to parietal to the frontal area. So a mirror image is created, a model is created, whatever we are seeing. So this is the Wi-Fi which has happened. That's what happens when I feel your pain. There's a famous statement by Bill Clinton. He says, many politicians use the same phrase, but after seeing you feel the pain, do you react or do you just forget about it? That's the important thing. Emotional empathy. So important thing for emotional empathy, as I've told you, is putative mirror neuron system, and insula and amygdala. Insula tells you the feeling that you feel the pain. Amygdala gives you the emotional wellness to it. Where these are the same areas, but here you'll see something else. TPJ, temporal pole, inferior parietal lobule, okay, and then precuneus and MPFC. This is medial prefrontal cortex. I'll tell you what happens to them. You'll find that medial prefrontal cortex is the most important thing. Just let me see what happens to them. Yeah, there you are. This is the regulator of our, is a controller over the temporal pole, our emotions area. So to cry or not to cry, only or just to feel or not to feel. But this MPFC area is for controlling the emotions. So here comes the TPJ. TPJ is temporoparietal junction, which tells you about this thinking. This is, and here you can see another view of putting all the studies together in a meta-analysis. And this TPJ is area where social functioning occurs. It is the cognitive ability to think about another person's beliefs and intention. So after seeing, the emotions goes there. And then one starts saying, no, this is not to be cried upon, but we have to help. And initiation of observation of emotions. So it goes to that different area. And this produces inhibition, and motivation pathways are involved, are activated. So that will be told to you, as shown just now after some time. What happens when you see something? So the same area is shared, emotional area is shared. So let's see the functional MRI of such. This is, suppose green is my, when I get a pain, this is my green is my area. When I see others getting pain, that's the red area. ACC, anterior cingulate cortex, insula, these are my areas, and you can see my intensity will be much more higher than what I have seen in the insula area where we feel. But ACC, it will be almost the same. And it's shared network, only not for the pain only, but for all the touch, smell, emotions. So these mirror neurons, they have a special role to play, and they have been shown in human beings also. Previously, we thought it was only in monkeys. In the living beings, by the depth recording for intractable epilepsy, it was piggybacked on their electrodes. It was shown that the greatest activity occurs when the individual performed a task, and when they observe the same neurons fire in a similar manner. It can be seen in the frontotemporal dementia cases. You will see this, this known as mirror neurons are known as von economos neurons. This is layer 5. They get reduced in the cases of behavior variant of the frontotemporal dementia, where you will find that empathy is lacking and their behavior is changing. Now, this is important connection. Why these two areas, medial prefrontal cortex and the temporal cortex, have to be together, and they come together through the uncinate as a white matter tract, which facilitates the integration between the two. And we can see in the DTI, diffusion studies, this tract is important for us to know. It's for the monitoring one's own thoughts and emotions, monitoring own thoughts and emotions and autobiographical memory. Temporal cortex from to the medial prefrontal cortex, orbital prefrontal cortex. If you see the normal MRI of the brain, these are the areas where you can see the different tracts, especially this uncinate fasciculus is important to know. Uncinate fasciculus, because this is one which gets infarcted very often, and the sudden behavior changes occur without paralysis in a stroke case. These are the different superior longitudinal fasciculus for connecting the mirror neurons. Here, what I told you about the stroke case. And these can be changed. The changes in the uncinate fasciculus could be seen in the progranular mutations of the carriers of FTD also, by their FA being low. These are the main tracts: uncinate fasciculus, longitudinal fasciculus, frontal and occipital, superior longitudinal fasciculus, and the functions I've already told you. Cognitive empathy is thus through the uncinate fasciculus. Medial prefrontal cortex controls the emotions, and you don't feel it, you only see it, which happens in doctors. There are different studies which are confirming that and giving evidences for that. Now, so if you see all these pictures, only pictures, what happens? You don't cry, you see angry, upset, but this is what is happening. You are able to analyze it, but did not feel it. These are green areas are for the cognitive areas where there is no pain areas involved. In cognitive evaluative empathy, there is no insula and ACC involvement, whereas the red area is for the what you call as emotional empathy. So what I was asked right at the beginning, how to differentiate between the sympathy and empathy. Empathy, I feel your pain. In sympathy, I'm sorry that you are in pain. You know there's pain, but you don't feel anything. And compassion is not only you to feel, you want to do something to relieve you of that pain. So I want to relieve your suffering. That's action. So whenever the action occurs, this becomes an empathy. There are different meta-analysis of different type of functional MRI studies, which I will show you in a nutshell here. In compassion is the medial occipital frontal cortex which gets involved. The reward circuit is getting involved. From the VTA, nuclear accumbens, whole circuit is involved. So there's a warmth takes place. And so in empathic was a negative circuit, negative in the anticingulate cortex and anti-insula pain. But here negative feelings were converted into positive feelings by what? By reward circuits, by compulsion. So you change the negative circuit into the positive circuit in the person who's observing it also, and the person who's suffering it also. Now see some of the examples. It happens very often. You two are seeing, the husband and wife are seeing the movie. Wife starts crying. Somebody's cutting and hurts the finger. You feel the pain. And this is one motor variety. Once you yawn, it spreads like a contagious. Many people, I'm sure, many of us would be trying to do that, trying to prevent from doing it. This happens in all the animals. And this is Dr. No's famous scene. Dr. No, where James Bond, that spider, Tartula, was climbing on it. So this sensation comes in. This is also through the same sharing network, through the mirrors. Doctors in empathy, doctors have more high tolerance. So it can be shown by different studies. They don't get that much pain. And if you do the functional MRI studies, you find that they don't have that much involvement of the insula. They're very minimal. On the contrary, the doctors have more involvement of medial prefrontal cortex. They try to they try to hold on to the pain. They don't feel it. Or less, if they were there, who would take care of your pain? If we all start crying with the patient. If you are attached in different phenomena, every phenomena, everything which comes can be seen is modeled inside our, is a mirror inside our brain by the same circuits. If somebody cuts, you also get the pain. Seeing, you can see that. It's not Mamata Banerjee's foot, but any foot which comes crushed, you'll get this sort of pain there. Feeling versus seeing. Seeing the pain, it produces the same circuit, as I told you, for Bill Clinton also, hopefully. And not only negative thing. If you smile, that's why people like to meet smiling people. You also get the same circuit activated. If you hear some good voice, positive voice, you also feel the same sensations in your brain. Actions, if you're having good juice, see, it produces the areas of somatosensory involvement. And others are, if you see them, others having the same, similar areas, mirror areas are involved. But if the worst thing was this one, obnoxious through the gas mask was given, rotten eggs. And what happened? Insula was activated, nauseated, vomited also. But if we saw someone else having the same thing, similar area was involved, is insula. So insula is actually connection. It transforms into limbic areas. It connects with limbic system and makes you feel. Similar in the other studies, same picture. So neuroscience supports what is borne out through our own experience. Encountering another's pain can in fact be painful for us, but taking action to alleviate another's suffering is a rewarding, positive experience. Encountering, again, others' pain can be painful. Taking action to alleviate suffering can be rewarding, positive experience. Empathy hurts, compassion heals. Empathy is feeling, compassion is action. Responding to others' suffering is being true human. That's what I would like to say. So it is the anti-insula and the anti-cingulate cortex, which are the main pain subserving areas which get stimulated. And compassion was not only understanding of others' emotion, but also motivation to help others. Now, empathy requires three essential things: listening, openness, understanding, perspective. The point of view, openness without questions. And clinical empathy is a skill of understanding what a patient says and feels, and is thinking about it. And then we have to effectively communicating this understanding to the patient. So first we have to understand their point of view, their perspective, then we should be able to communicate it to them. This is clinical empathy. Clinical empathy is the main component of the patient-provider relationship. It's a pillar of professionalism. If we are not connected, patient is not with us. A small touch while listening to the patient is compassion. Different stages, different times. Why does compassion really matter? This is the main question. This is the main question. The science of medicine is how to treat patients. The art of medicine is how to take care of them. How to take care of them. That's important. Now, this is a study from Boston, Harvard, and published in NEJM and JAMA, that there was 50% healing with a compassionate clinician seeing the patient just before the anesthesia and after the anesthesia. In both the cases, the healing occurs earlier and the pain becomes less. How does it happen? Holding the hand, touching, this you'll say is Lambo Jumbo. No, this is I'll tell you the scientific evidence of it. Activation of parasympathetic nervous system can also be thought to be relaxation response. It produces a positive emotion, the warmth, the calming effect that we feel when someone cares deeply about us and shows us compassion. This is from the Wake Forest University, which showed scientific evidence supports that human connection is a powerful activator of not only positive emotion, but also parasympathetic nervous system. So it harnesses parasympathetic nervous system, more oxytocin is released, trust bonding hormone is released, and the patient starts healing much better. These are studies published on it. The healing occurs 4 times more if the clinician treating a traumatized patient is a compassionate one. So compassion produces 4 times more quick and more intense healing. Compassion improves quality of life in palliative care. Care actually survived on an average 30% longer. 30% longer if the clinician is compassionate. Now this is in the proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States of America, PNAS. Brain-to-brain coupling during hand-holding is associated with pain reduction. Brain-to-brain coupling may be involved in touch-related analgesia. During experimentally induced pain, the compassionate touch of a trusted other results in physiological coupling. This was the investigation. You can see the experiment design, holding, and how the coupling occurs. So it produces, not only that, it produces analgesia is less there in these cases. Then patient-centered interviewing, patient-centered, means compassionate interviewing. It reduces the insula activation, reduce pain-related neural response in anti-insula. You can see that here. In the neurology OPD, patients sitting there, they're put onto care instrument, and this is an instrument to measure compassion in doctors. And they found those neurologists who had more compassion of treating migraine patients, their patients improved much better. They had less high migraine and less intensity and less frequency. And the trust in physicians plays a major role. And how the trust comes? Not because of the marketing, not about the shows, not by 220 publications on 17 books, chapters written. Patient doesn't know about it. Patient knows how the patient can, whether the doctor can inculcate or initiate a sense of compassion in them. This was a study was done by Michigan State University on 550 OPD patients, and NIH supported studies in University of California, which said very clearly the trust was directly related to compassion of the physician. So compassion brings us to the stop and to a moment we rise above ourselves. But are we in the midst of compassion crisis? It has been said so. After a bus accident, 6 died and 55 survivors recalled only 2 things. First, the trauma, physical pain of the impact of the accident. And the second, lack of empathy and compassion in the medical caregivers. This is a very damaging statement. So it was studied. Harvard data, Harvard people studied it, and in Health Affairs it was published, where they found 50% of the healthcare providers not compassionate at all. And what patients thought, 2/3 of the patients had lack of compassion experience. 70% of opportunities of compassion are missed by physicians. Only 1% of the communications from physicians have compassion content when they write to patients. No compassion when it is maximum required. 1/3 of the end of the life discussions has no compassion, zero compassion, end of life discussions. 74% of ICU workers showed no compassion for the patient or the families. Chicago study reveals, it was a federal funded study, surgeons had less than 1% compassion. Think of it. Empathy declining in physicians during training. Why? 17 out of 18 studies found empathy declining in medical students. As per Johns Hopkins studies, residents spend only 12% of their time seeing admitted patients compared to 40% time doing computer work. Physicians glorified typists hard to connect with patients. If you don't have time, you can't connect with the patient, because for empathy, listening, openness, understanding, time is required. Compassion is a casualty of technomedicine because you ought to be busy with the technology so much. It takes only 40 seconds to make the difference in the compassionate conversation between the doctor and patient. 40 seconds only, 40 seconds. And 56% of physicians don't have time for compassion. Think of it, 40% of them, 56% of them. But they have lack of time for misplaced priorities. How to get the time out of it? A study in 1984 in Annals of Internal Medicine said 77% of patients are interrupted before they finish opening a statement of concerns, averaging about 17 seconds. So within 70 seconds, the doctor interrupts because that doesn't have time to listen to all the story. And 2018, Mayo Clinic repeated the same test and found the time is reduced to 11 seconds before interrupting. More technology has come in, obviously. No effort to connect with the patient, but connects with computer. You can think of it. Spend more time looking at the computer screen than looking at the patient. She's trying to give a history. There's no connection there. Because the era of electronic records, research shows that healthcare providers spend more time looking at the computer screen than looking at the patient's eyes. Clinical empathy, Jeffers scale, which was found that family physician, general medicine people, and the medicine-related specialties, they score higher on the Jeffers scale of physician empathy than the students entering technology-oriented specialties such as pathology, radiology, anesthesiology. They score lower, and surgery with technologies. So this is leading to physician burnout. What is physician burnout? Emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, not connecting with the patient, a lack of sense of personal accomplishment, so they feel negativity. So the healthcare environment with its packed work days, demanding pace, time pressure, and target pressure, they get exhausted, burnout. So what happens? A study is done, and neurology and urology top the study of getting burnouts. 54% urology doctors, 50% of the neurology doctors, they have a burnout apart from the other, which I'm not going to detail. Irrespective of the age, maximum in the middle age group, between 40 and 54. The reason for that burnout is too much of non-clinical work, bureaucratic work, chart work, and increasing computerization of practice. Focus on tasks rather than caring, increasing use of technology, treating just a diagnosis rather than a whole person. Healthcare has become dehumanized. Think of it, a child goes to the pediatrician, doctor comes back, usually would draw a white coat person with his stethoscope around and smiling, but now she draws or he draws a person sitting on the chair with the back to the patient, the family, and his hand on the keyboard and looking at the screen. That's what the doctor is now. So with the result, 60% of doctors would not recommend medicine as a career to young people. When we became doctors, apart from the other things, but it was a calling also. Working in healthcare is just not a job, but it's a calling. We share most intimate aspects of people's lives in the darkest and the most difficult moments. Walking with people through the worst, most intimate moments of their lives is a sacred thing. It's a real human thing. But alas, it's turning into a job now. You have to finish the job. So what are the solutions? You'll be surprised to know that it's compassion, empathy is not in medical curriculum. It should be included in the compassion should be included in the medical curriculum. Not even in code of medical ethics, or think of it. American Medical Association was the same, but there was a lot of hullabaloo was made. So in 2001, it was added, and it was said that with compassion and respect for human dignity and patient. So the time has come that we should also listen to the patients, and the need of the hour is that compassion should be cultivated within ourselves, built within ourselves through the curriculum. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now,
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Wonderful talk. Wonderful. So nice. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope the message, our president is here, our executive committee is here. At least we can ask for the compassion to be included in the curriculum. At least that much we can do for the patients. It is in their interest and our interest as well. So now the time has come. Time has come to go to our next part, and really the most opportune moment for us to see what happens when we interact with Sadhguru. I will take the privilege of opening this meeting, welcoming you all. Before that, I must tell you this is a Contemplative Neurology subsection of Indian Academy of Neurology, which is organizing this to bring about knowing what is beyond neurology, what we know about neurology, what happens beyond that, where the answers are not yet available, for which we're now knocking at the door of the wisdom personified. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Amitabh Verma. I'm chairman of this subsection of Contemplative Neurology. I'm also chairman of Cognitive Neurology section of Indian Academy of Neurology. I had been as a physician for 50 years, 50th running now, and 45 years as a neurologist. I was teaching for some time at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. I practiced in New Delhi as chairman of Super Specialty Hospital. Well, my colleague, Dr. Sudhir Shah, is very eminent neurologist from Ahmedabad. I'm from Delhi, he's from Ahmedabad. He's professor, director, head of department of Medical College of Ahmedabad. He's also director of Sterling Hospital. He's the recipient of Padma Shri and also B.C. Roy Memorial Award. Very illustrious career and a good human being, the best thing. My colleague, who is a convener of my subsection of Contemplative Neurology. Now, Professor Bala. Dr. Bala is director of Sadhguru's Center for Compassion and Planet Consciousness at Harvard Medical School, Boston. He is also professor of anesthesiology at Harvard. He did his post-graduation from All India Institute of Medical Sciences only. At the best of the places in the world, he has been trained, and he is a leading cardiac anesthetist on which cardiac surgeons rely. I would like to thank him for being a part of it, for interconnecting us properly. And then comes the privilege of introducing Sadhguru. Considered among India's topmost 50 influential people, Sadhguru is a yogi, mystic, best-selling author, and a poet. Absolute clarity of perception places him in a unique space, not only in a mere spiritual, but in business, environmental and international affairs, and opens a new door on all that he touches. Sadhguru's talks have earned him the reputation of a speaker of international renown. He has received the Padma Vibhushan, initiated Rally of Rivers, an ecological initiative supported by over 160 million people, been a lead speaker at the UN General Assembly and a regular at the World Economic Forums. Besides speaking at establishments such as the World Bank, House of Lords UK, World Presidents Organization, MIT, University of Oxford, Google's, to name a few. It's a privilege to welcome you, sir.
Dr. Verma, thank you so much for your welcome. And it has been my privilege to interact with the two of you neurologists, eminent neurologists in your field in India, and also with Sadhguru. I wanted to start off with following our conversations in the last few days to ask you, where do thoughts originate in our brain? Can you contextualize that neurologically, Dr. Verma, please?
Well, that's very interesting. We all have been wondering about it. We all keep on thinking. Our brain is always occupied with thoughts. Where do they arise from? What are the thoughts actually? They are the brain processes leading to flow of pre-stored information in original or fragmented or reorganized form by association that can lead to reality-oriented conclusions in either audio, visual, or audiovisual perceptions. So thoughts are audiovisual. This is important. This definition will tell you that different areas of the brain have information embedded in that. But what catches these informations, brings on a particular lead, like a string, that brings it out. But that particular area in the brain is known as default mode network. By default, means it is always active. It's reverberating with vibrations, reverberating, electrical impulses. This is arising. I'll give you an example. There's the brain, right? There's the brain. It arises from this posterior cingulate cortex, like that.
Oh, you actually pulled out somebody's brains, huh?
Oh, well, the science is not as advanced to carry on the band like that, but this is a model. So to make people understand, this is posterior, this is DMN. Now, DMN has a major, it is worth mentioning that DMN, default mode network, consumes 90% of the total brain energy, 90%. And out of which the main share is, it has a different assembly units, like a BMW has assembly unit for the car parts here, air conditioner, there are different places. So it has a major assembly unit, which is known as PCC, posterior cingulate cortex. This is the posterior cingulate cortex. It is middle side, Sindhu Jahan, from where it goes inside that. Now, this itself consumes 40% of the energy. It keeps on reverberating in different cycles. Usually with consolidating information, it is 4 cycles. When it's fast interconnecting with other areas, it is up to gamma, beyond 30. Now, this has to do, along with this area, which is precuneus, it has to do with our self-awareness, human awareness, not self-awareness, human awareness. Also with the perception of the environmental, memory, retrieval, episodic memory, or autobiographical memory. I must tell you, brain is a CEO of nervous system, having these processes all over the body, nerves. So it gets information, memories from everywhere. This area of the brain increases when we are concentrating on something outside, decreases its metabolic activity when we are focusing on something, on any event. It has connections, it withdraws information from different places and forms these functions. Then comes another area near to it, this angular cortex. Other side we can see, where the vision can be seen, different visionary areas, not vision from the, but it's a seeing and escaping. Then we have, next area would be insula, which is, these are the hubs actually, which gets all the information from the different parts of the viscera inside the body and gives you a feeling of pain also. It's here you feel this insula is connected with the emotional areas and the rest of the area where it touches, everything else comes. This is also supposed to be autonomic center. Another area which comes in connection, is medial temporal lobe from this side. This is the medial temporal lobe. Medial temporal lobe. It is concerned with the emotion, emotional regulation. Also, it is concerned with the socializing, social cognitions, finding what others are thinking about other people, assuming. For that, in fact, the best area which is in the default mode network will be TPJ, temporal, the parietal junction. This is where the theory of mind is there. It's not a mind reader, but it can have a perspective of what other people are thinking based on so many inputs which it gets. Well, then we have the regulator, the medial prefrontal cortex and the anterior prefrontal cortex. These are the areas. Medial prefrontal cortex is the regulator, decision maker, which has to do or not to do, which puts a brake on many of our plans, actions. And this anterior prefrontal cortex is telling us what to think about future, what are goals in future. All these together produce mind wandering, mind chatter. We all undergo that unless we are focusing on that. It has a beauty of its own. No doubt it consumes all the energy, but out of which creativity also arises, something new comes in. Now, these are the different DMN area, but there are other things also, other networks, parietal, frontoparietal networks, attention salience network. It's like a spotlight where to focus our attention. On the stage, there are so many actors. The spotlight tells us this is the actor. Same thing, salience network. Then dorsal attention network, which tells you visual movements, where to move eyes and see. So different factors are there. They all are interconnected. So we keep on getting information on these areas and just continuously working. It has also been suggested, not every person doesn't agree because these are new things which are coming up, that this is active during dream stage also. As I said, these are fragmented and new associations of all these. I would like to say that this is something like a piano keyboard. Keys are there. They're pressed and melody is formed. Who presses it at what sequence? This matters. So the DMN's work is to get all the information. That's what we know about thought. But every cell of these cortex, different areas, has the molecules getting converted into chemicals, and then electrical energy, which come into the pathways. So from invisible to micro to macro and to audible. So visual, audible thoughts are going on in our brain and times. Similarly, I would like to know exactly who is controlling that, creating it. If I'm seeing you, sir, I'm seeing Bala, Sadhguru, Sudhir. Vision is going on inside, but who's perceiving it, saying that, look here, you are rewarded for your life by being with Sadhguru? Who's there? Who tastes? Who smells? Who gets the pain? Who is me? Who's me inside the brain? Who's getting all this information? Despite knowing all neuroanatomical, neurophysiological, neurochemical, neurotransmitter, neuroelectrical, but we do not know who's the initiator and who is the receiver of all this information. So this is my request to Sadhguru to enlighten us with yogic senses.
Well, these two questions put together, it'll take 3 days to answer this question. You are all the qualified people in the arena. I know only what I know by my experience. I'm not someone who studied these things, but in the yogic system of practice, strengthening of neurological system is a very, very significant part of it, because the whole science of yoga is only about enhancing our perception, because yogis are hard nuts who will not agree with any deductions or refuse to believe anything that is not in their experience. So if something has to come into your experience which is not yet right now, the only way is to enhance your perception. So in the process of enhancing the perception, having a very strong, vibrant neurological system is very important. If maybe people are not aware of this, in yogic system, we don't see brain as a separate thing. We just see, the spine and the remaining parts of the neurological system as, like the roots of a tree and the stem, and the brain as the flower. So we don't do anything particular about the brain, but largely about the enhancing the capacity of the neurological system. It can be brought into a space where it doesn't jangle for any reason, whatever happens in our lives, whatever situations or things hit us, a certain stability of neurological system is something that a yogi always strives for, because this determines the level of perception that you have and your ability to handle your perception. For a whole lot of people, they must be glad that they are not perceiving many things in the world. They live in for them ignorance is bliss, because if they know everything that's happening, they will not be able to sleep, they will not be able to do anything, they will go crazy. So this is why this term, saying, ignorance is bliss has come, because for many people they cannot handle their knowing, they cannot handle the reality of their existence. So having said that, what is the basis of thought? Well, Doctor, you explained the mechanical situation of how a thought is generated, what's happening in the brain. This default mechanism is something that is recognized in yoga also, and one important aspect of yogic sadhana is to stop this default. That default, by default, whatever is happening, the default mode of your neurological system must come to a standstill, so that what you do in your neurological system is largely by design, if not absolutely, largely by design. Once this happens, your ability to see things clearly, your ability to manifest what you want in the world is greatly enhanced, so greatly enhanced that ordinary people may think this is some kind of a superhuman possibility. Well, the purpose of yoga is not to become superhuman. The purpose of yoga is to realize that being human is super. So, as evolutionary sciences go, all of us know that on top of the pile, of evolutionary pile that we have of millions of creatures on this planet, we are on the very top. The only reason we are on the very top is of the sophistication of our neurological system. Our muscular system, our skeletal system, our other things are not as robust and strong as many other creatures on the planet. But our neurological system is so very complex, and that is why we are on top of the pile. So in terms of evolution also, it is the neurological complexity and sophistication which puts a particular creature above the other creatures. That is what has happened to the human being. So why is this continuous default mode is on? One simple way of looking at it is that we are always identified with something. Human beings, from the moment of their birth, quickly they learn to identify with something. Initially with the mother, then with the parents, then with the household, family, education, race, religion, nationality, many things, caste, creed, variety of things, thousands of identities. It is because of this need for identity, which is a tool to function in the society, as it gets concretized, as you become more and more identified, more and more this default mode becomes active. That is, you will be in an endless chain of thought process, not thinking, just thoughts are running randomly in your mind for no reason, mainly because you're identified with something that you are not. When I say identified with something that you are not, anything that you accumulate, anything that's outside of you, you're not that. It may be yours. Starting with the body, we accumulate this body, we accumulate the information in our minds, and we accumulate people, we accumulate things, we accumulate various identities. Whichever way we identify ourselves, that is the way our mind will think, because the purpose of the intellect is to largely protect the identity. The stronger your identity, the more your default mode will be on, very strongly. If your identity is not so strong, your default mode will come down. If you can sit here without any sense of identity, your default mode will be almost off. In the sense, I can tell you, I know a whole lot of your colleagues will go at me, but it's all right, it'll at least start a debate, that, you know, like if I close my doors and withdraw for something for a few days, for 3, 4, 5 days, I won't have a single thought on my mind. I am not reading something, I am not looking at any a medium of television or phone or anything, I am not even looking out of the window. Not a single thought passes in my mind, because the process of life is a much bigger phenomena than the thought process. Unfortunately, most human beings are so deeply identified with their own thought process that the thought process cannot stop. The thoughts that you create are your making, whatever they are, by default or by design. What you create is your making. So what you create cannot be you. It is yours, but it is not you. The moment you get identified with that thought process, you may call it by many names. You say, my nation, my family, my husband, my wife, my child, my race, religion, but these are all just thought processes. That something is my nation, somebody is my family, something belongs to me, something doesn't belong to me, these are all just thought processes. So once your default thought process goes down, if not stop, at least it goes down to the minimal level, identity will become loose, or if you consciously push your identities away from you, thought process will go down naturally, that people will know many moments or minutes and hours of thoughtless experience. When you're without thought, this doesn't mean you're unconscious, you're very, very conscious. Actually, you're really conscious only when there is no distraction of thought. So consciousness is very much on, but the thought process is an activity. It is like my hand is moving right now. If this is being moved by me, it is okay, but if it starts jumping by itself, that you will… I don't know what will be the ailment, but it'll be some ailment. Maybe some Mr. Parkinson's or somebody else is visiting me, all right? So if my hand starts jumping, we know it's an ailment, but if our mind is in that state, we are giving it a very dignified name of default mode. No, it is just the same thing. We must find one Mr. something Samson or Johnson or somebody okay, instead of Mr. Parkinson, because it's jumping around for no reason. So in the yogic system, this default mode is almost looked at like an ailment. It's an ailment that the mind is not in what is called as a sthira state. It is not stable. It is jumping all over the place because unnecessary identifications we have identified ourselves with. Because of that, this will go on. Now, this thought process as such, the content of it is coming from various dimensions of memory. We identify 8 dimensions of memory, which are like elemental memory, evolutionary memory, karmic memory, conscious memory, unconscious memory, articulate and inarticulate memory, and the present state of very conscious, immediately active memory. So these 8 forms of memory are feeding the thought process. The most conscious part which we are using on a daily basis, we know our name, we know in which town we are, this is our immediate type of memory. But our genetic memory is also built into us. We don't see… the yoga doesn't identify brain as a separate space at all, because we say this is manomaya kosha, that is, there is a mind throughout your body. Because every cell in the body carries more memory than the whole brain can carry, because the genetics, how our forefathers were 1,000,000 years ago, still every cell in the body remembers to the minutest detail, to the color of the skin, the tone of the skin, it remembers, the way our hair is, it remembers. So 1,000,000 years ago, how our forefathers were, still that memory is instilled within us. So every cell in the body has enormous memory and also intelligence to conduct very, very sophisticated chemical processes that are happening. So, mind is right from head to toe, there is a mind, that is how yoga sees it, it's a sheath of mind. Now, today because of the type of modern education that we do, because it's very intellectual, we are only using one part of the intelligence. This is the reason why… this is one of the main reasons why human beings are so stressed. Though never before in the history of humanity we knew the kind of comforts that we know today, we know the kind of arrangements of survival that we know today. Humanity has organized its survival process better than ever before in the history of humanity. We have more comforts and conveniences that nobody could dream of even 50 years ago today, but people are stressed. Mainly because of this, they are using only one aspect of their intelligence, not using the other dimensions of intelligence. This is like you're driving a car, you try to drive it on one wheel, of course car will be in enormous stress. Right now, whatever people are doing, whether they are doing business, academics, even spiritual leaders and political leaders and students, even school students, everybody is stressed because they're trying to run on one leg, not using both the legs or not using multiple aspects of intelligence that we have. Because our schooling system has become like this, it's become purely intellectual. Intellectual process cannot operate without the data that we have already gathered. Whatever our intellect does can only operate within the scope of the data that we have. If we don't go beyond that, it will be very stressful to even do small things. And this whole thought process going on without respite is mainly because of this, that we are super identified with our own thoughts and emotions. We have come to a space where we are misunderstanding psychological reality as existential. Once we make this mistake, the default mode is the most dominant mode within us. That means our mind is not being used by us. Once in a way it may be useful, most of the time it's a nuisance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sadhguru. That was fascinating. But because Dr. Verma said, I couldn't help myself ask this question. He said 90% of the energy is spent by DMN, or the default mode network. So we do programs with you, Sadhguru. At some point, somewhere, we experience deeper states of consciousness, or at least diminished levels of thoughts. What happens in your presence can be effortless sometimes. So what is it actually happening? I mean, I cannot do that at home. I mean, I can try it, but not to that same level. Are you giving us energy to overcome this default mode network?
Well, you can do it anywhere. It's just that, in the beginning, when you don't know what you're doing with yourself, maybe you need the support of the atmosphere. When I say atmosphere, well, now you are asking questions which will be considered either paranormal or mumbo-jumbo, whatever you want to call it. But is there life functioning beyond our understanding, intellectual understanding? Obviously it is, there's simply no question about that. So let us not either accept it or dismiss it, let us look at it. See, the way to look at this life is like this. This is a living cosmos. What you call as you and me is just a small bubble in this cosmos. Suppose you blow a soap bubble, there is two bubbles, your bubble and my bubble. If the bubbles burst, then there is no such thing as your air and my air. So the air was everywhere, we captured a little bit. Similarly, this is a living cosmos, we captured a little bit of life. How much life you capture is how significant your life will become. When I say significant, not socially significant, significant in terms of your experience. When I say significant in terms of your experience, that is, if you sit here, simply for no reason, your life is worthwhile just sitting here because it's become so significant presence within yourself. If you generate this presence because you are blowing a big bubble, you're blowing a big bubble, the bigger the bubble, the thinner will become the soap sheath. The sheath of the soap will become thinner and thinner. Similarly with this, the physical body, in some people, the physical body may be the most dominant presence. Somebody has grown big muscles and they're young, for them the body is the most dominant thing. Well, for somebody else, all of you academics, maybe for you, your intellect, your mind is the most important thing or the most dominant factor in your life. There is somebody else for whom their emotions are the most dominant factor. Similarly, you can make your life energies also the most dominant factor. So, the yogic practices are always seeing, they're not trying to make you better, they're just seeing how that… what can you do to capture little more life so that you are a bigger presence. So in your experience, the life or the life force becomes more dominant an experience than your body and its ways, your mind and its ways, your emotions and its ways. So whatever your thoughts, your emotions and your physiological utterances and compulsions that are there, all these things will recede simply because your life energy has become very dominant. So because in a program, whatever you have been through, Bala, because not everybody is able to do the necessary practices, different people come with different levels of preparation. One thing that we are doing is really flooding the place with a certain kind of life energy, which costs life for the people who are doing it. But once you do this, everybody falls into place. As you have seen, even if hundreds and thousands of people are sitting, this is people keep telling me all this, Sadhguru, this is the only place where 500, 600,000 people are sitting in one place. If I say close your eyes, everybody closes their eyes and sits there unmoving. Many of them have come there for the very first time, they are not trained practitioners or anything. This is simply because if you create a certain energy, then in your experience, your life energy becomes more dominant than your body, than your intellect, than your emotions. Suddenly, when this becomes important, this becomes dominant in your experience, the needs and compulsive nature of body and mind will recede. In that you will experience your thought process has settled down. Whether it's your body or your mind, everything that's physical in nature is naturally cyclical. When I say naturally cyclical, whether you take a single atom, it is moving in circles. You take the planetary system, it's moving in circles, the galaxies are moving in circles. Everything that's physical in nature is always in a cyclical motion, and this is our idea of time. Our idea and experience of time is our own bodily cycles and the cycles of sun and moon, which gives us a sense of time. So one thing that happens when your life energies, which are not so physical, nearly non-physical, almost in a transient state, when that becomes dominant, the cyclical movement of your mind and body will recede. You might have noticed, we are doing a program, I don't give a bathroom break for 5 hours, 6 hours, nobody goes there because there are no thoughts and the cycles of the body also have, become less dominant. It's not that it's gone, they have become less dominant. So in that sense, you might have experienced lower level of thought. Can you make it happen at home? You can make it happen anywhere because you are as much life as I am. It's just that your focus has been on your mind. See, you lost all your hair. You're a young man.
Thank you, Sadhguru. So Professor Shah has done a wonderful paper on pursuit of happiness. He has been, I was just reading that article. Professor Shah, can you explain what is the neurobiology of happiness as we know from the neurological point of view, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bala. Namaskaram, Sadhguru. I think I must thank all of you for giving me this wonderful privilege and opportunity. Now, basically, we are all tossing with the same thing. Ever since human existence, we are concerned with how to improve brain power on one side and how to create happiness for ourselves. These are the fundamental questions. And doing my research and reviewing a lot of papers, I realized that there are 3 different levels of happiness. One is physiological, that is body-based, related to 5 senses: eat, drink, and be merry. With the eyes, we hear; with the ears, listen music; with taste, tongue, you taste and touch and all that. So this is sensual, physiological, which is a very short-lived, transient happiness. The second level, which is more of a human type, the previous is more of animal instinct. This is a human instinct, that is joy. The previous one is pleasure, the next level is joy. Joy is achievements, awards, successes, creativity, imparting joy, like you are imparting knowledge. So all these building communes and creating institutions, this is all falling under joy, that is satisfaction level. And the third, which is most important and which very few people really seek for and get it actually, is bliss, that is Nijanand, and that is the highest level of happiness. So although the words have same dictionary connotations, I think they have a different meaning contextually. And when I was looking at the neurotransmitters, the different sets of circuits and neurotransmitters are involved. As for example, in the pleasure, that is in sensual-based happiness, we have more of dopamine and serotonin, and to some extent noradrenaline play. And it is typically transient, and perpetual demand occurs so that you become unhappy when your desires are not fulfilled. Joy is little longer lasting because there is oxytocin, vasopressin, and prolactin in addition to the previous chemicals. And their neurocircuit is different. The brain area that is involved also different. And there you have bonding, social kind of connections. But these two has dependence to some extent. But so we should be looking towards that kind of happiness which is coming from within. And Sadhguru, I heard some of your talks, you've been mentioning that our inner core is all full of anand and bliss. It is we who have created unhappiness for us with our thoughts, desires, emotions, ego, perceptions, beliefs, attitude, etc., and whatnot, and what you told just now. So I think looking at this, when neuroscience tries to fix it up, we come to know that 20% of our happiness is derived from our genetic input. Okay, and genes can now be modified with epigenetics, with your thoughts, behavioral patterns, meditation, and altruistic actions. A day will come when we'll be able to do actual gene editing. So you will come to, say, Dr. Bala has a problem, will come to my lab and I will actually edit his genes and will be a happier person. Well, jokes apart, there are other things that neuroscience can do is to do, some changes in the attitude shifting, meditation. 50% of our happiness comes from attitude, behavior, relaxation, meditation, and relationship management. The rest 30% comes from our physical things like health, money, and kind of circumstances. So, Sadhguru, we have ways to modulate brain with some drugs and also remove our anxiety, depression with drugs. Also do counseling. We have bionics. We have some kind of deep brain stimulation techniques coming up. We have neurostimulation. And with Elon Musk and others, we might be having some kind of artificial intelligence to help out human sufferings. But I know that neuroscience has limitation, and unless the strength of neuroscience is coupled with the wisdom and vision of yogis like you and the yogic practices, I think neither happiness nor brain power can be achieved properly. So we are looking for a kind of contemplation and some combination where neuroscience can get wisdom from yogis like you. So I'm sorry to be a little elaborate, but I thought this question is most fundamental to human existence. So kindly enlighten all this. Thank you very much.
There's different words that you employed: pleasure, joy, bliss. There's another way to look at this. I'm trying to make it more simple. See, it is the pleasantness of experience. A human being is always looking for pleasantness of experience. Whatever it is, their idea of wealth, their success, relationships, pleasure, heaven, everything essentially means pleasantness of experience. So we will put it this way, if the body is pleasant, we call this health. Everybody wants it. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it pleasure. How it happens, it doesn't matter, but this is what it is. If your mind becomes pleasant, we call this peace. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it joy. If your emotions become pleasant, we call this love. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it compassion. If your very life energies become pleasant, we call this bliss. And if it becomes very pleasant, we call it ecstasy. If your surroundings become pleasant, we call this success. Only to create pleasantness in our surroundings, we need the cooperation of various forces. Because to create external pleasantness, everybody around has to cooperate, otherwise it was not going to happen. But for pleasantness of body, for pleasantness of mind and emotion and energies, it is 100% our business. So it is because of this that this entire Indian way of looking at things is like this, that your life is your karma. The way you're experiencing your life right now, the situations that you are in may not be yours 100%, but the way you're experiencing it right now is 100% yours because you can determine the nature of your experience. You may not be able to determine where you are, what you are doing many times in your life, but you are able to determine how you experience whatever is coming at you. What the world throws at you is not always your choice. What you make out of it in your experience, how you respond to it, how you experience it, is 100% your making. This is why we always, this is the only culture where constantly we've been reminding you, your life is your karma, that means your life is your making. The way you're experiencing it is 100% yours. Having said that, about the chemistry of whatever you said, I'm not an expert in that, but there have been researchers, and Bala is very aware of this, that certain like studies have clearly found there are cannabinoid receptors in our brain and the body also, millions of them. So we are capable of producing this within ourselves. So chemically, we can activate the system in such a way, if you keep the system very exuberant and vibrant, it will also have this, that it doesn't matter what happens with the external situations, there is a certain amount of pleasantness within you which is not threatened by anything, which cannot be taken away by anything. Once you have this assurance, no matter what happens with your life, this is how you will be. Once you have this assurance, you have no fear of suffering. When you have no fear of suffering, that is when a human being will really want to explore the deeper dimensions of everything, because there is no fear of suffering. Otherwise, most human beings are always curtailing themselves because of fear of suffering. Every step that they take is half a step because the question of what will happen to me is always there. Essentially, it means that the fear that if this happens, I may suffer, or that happens may bring more suffering to me. This fear is always controlling the human being. This is the reason, this is very significant, I'm putting it in a different context. This entire culture always talked about liberation. The only goal is mukti. Liberation need not necessarily mean you got liberated and dissolved somewhere. Yes, that is also a possibility, that's a different dimension. But right now you are liberated means one important thing is you are free from the fear of suffering. If the fear of suffering is gone in you, in many ways you are liberated because life and various mechanisms of life cannot hold you down. The many mechanisms that are there in our life to help us to live here can help us at one level, also curtail us at another level. You know, the society in which you live, the family that you make, the education that you go through, at one level it empowers you, another level it curtails you. To become free from that, mukti on every level of life, that you have become free from suffering, suddenly you feel that you're liberated. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you experience life and the way you act and perform in the world, everything will be… there will be clear signs of liberation in everything that you do. This is why liberating is very important. Why I'm stressing on this is because the rest of the world has always been talking about controlling the mind. They think it's some out-of-control instrument, you have to control it. No, you just have to liberate it. Liberation means one thing is from fear of suffering, another thing is from the ignorance of believing that you are something other than what you are. Everything that you have physically in this world, body, home, family, thought process, emotions, all are physical in nature. As you were saying, as the doctor was saying that, for thought process there's an electrical manifestation. Electricity is a physical phenomena, all right? So thought process is also considered physical, emotion is physical. All these are accumulated substances. What is accumulated can be yours, can never ever be you. So once this is clearly experienced within you, what you accumulate is not you, it is just yours, you can use them, but it's not actually you. Once this becomes a clear-cut experience, then you will see this default mode will be completely off. That means your mind takes instructions from you. This hand is useful only because it takes instructions from me. If it starts doing its own thing, it's a nuisance. The same is true with the mind. A whole lot of people, unfortunately, a very large percentage of people are right now experiencing their mind as the source of suffering. What is the greatest gift that we have? That is, we are right now on top of the pile of the evolutionary system, where millions of lives are beneath us in terms of capability. We are experiencing, human beings are experiencing this evolutionary gift as a curse, because human beings are suffering more than any other creature on the planet. We are literally on top of the world, but we are not feeling on top of the world, we are being crushed by our own capabilities, which is our intelligence. We have an intelligence for which we have not created a stable enough base. One most important thing is this: for this level of neurological capability, you need a stable base. The entire yogic system is focused towards creating a stable base so that you can let loose your intelligence. You can let loose your neurological activity in such a way that if you walk into the room, everybody can feel it. There is an electric kind of energy about you because you have let loose your system, you're not holding back anything, because you have no fear of damaging yourself, because you cannot damage yourself if you are not holding it down and doing funny things with it. So you can become that energetic that if you walk into a space, everybody can feel it. Even if they're sitting with their eyes closed, if you walk in, they can feel that energy happening, because this is what mukti means, that you have liberated your system, you have not held it down, you're not trying to control it, because it is not a source of misery. This mind, this body is neither a source of misery nor source of blissfulness. You can make it whatever you want.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sadhguru.
The yogic process is for liberation. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sadhguru. So, following along the previous thoughts that you expressed about the memory and Dr. Verma's thoughts on thoughts, is this the genetic memory that dominates, or is the karmic memory that dominates? Because I seem like I have both inputs coming into me. I don't know which one is…
Well, the genetic memory has a certain level of significance till you're 21 years of age. At 21 years of age, something very fundamental changes in the system, that the genetic memory becomes less dominant, it just starts playing minimal role. Many parents are surprised how the children who were so attached to them just some time ago, suddenly they cross 21 years of age, suddenly they cannot relate the same way with their parents, simply because their genetic memory becomes at a lowered scale of function once 21 years of age is over. This is nature's way of building up a kind of a safety mechanism for our growth, because a human child doesn't come like other animals. Other animals, 90% of what they should be is already fixed by their genetics. Only 10% of evolution in their lifetime, that too they can either exploit it or not. But with a human being, only 10% is fixed, 90% is left to individual human being. Because of this, the early stage of development for a human child is much more fragile, needs much more atmosphere, needs much more nurture, because 90% has to be created, only 10% is already there as a standard. So, by 21 years of age, your genetic influence would have come down significantly, unless you're very unnaturally attached to your parent age, either because they have too much wealth, or or because they're very dominant, or because you admire them too much, whatever. Otherwise, the genetic influence will come down naturally. So after that, the karmic influence is a much bigger influence than the genetic influence. When we say karmic influence, we should not… because there is this wrong perception that Karma means it was only talking about something that comes from elsewhere from another life or whatever. It's not like that. From this morning, from the time you got up to this moment, your body is doing its own physical karma, mind is doing its mental karma, emotion is doing its emotional karma, energy is doing energetic karma. Every moment, in wakefulness and sleep it's happening. But let us take into account only the wakefulness. From the moment you got up till now, how much of these four aspects of karma have you performed consciously? If you look at it, I don't want to ask you the question, I would normally ask, but with you are all doctors, I won't ask you the question, I will just say this, you please analyze this yourself. Not even 1%, way below 1% is what you're conscious of. Everything else is happening unconsciously. Or in other words, instead of using the unconscious word, which is a kind of a negative word, let's say you're happening automatically. You're happening automatically because of the karmic memory. You have so much memory that you don't have to really think. You don't have to think how to eat. See, when the first time as a child, eating was such a big thing, especially Indian food, it was falling all over you. But today, very efficiently you eat, but you don't think exactly how to hold the food, what to do, because this memory has been built up with your karma. Karma means action. These four dimensions of action are always building things up to make life easier for you, not to entangle you. So it's a web of karma that you create. But when you create a web, you must have a certain, you must have some kind of a solvent that you don't get stuck in it. Suppose you are a spider, you create a beautiful, spectacular web. It is for others to get stuck in it, some other insect. But if the spider itself gets entangled in it, that is a stupid spider. So that is what is happening to human beings. An elaborate system of memory is being created every moment. See, you may be sleeping, there are many experiments like this, I won't go into the detail. Even when you're sleeping, you're fast asleep, you don't know. I will speak in a language that you do not know 1 or 10 sentences. Actually, we can hypnotize you after many months or years, we can make you say those sentences in a language that you do not know, you perceived it at a time when you are fast asleep. It is possible to do that. So I am saying if you walk from this place to that place, there may be 25 different kinds of smells. You may not notice it consciously. Only if it's very acute, either it is very bad or very good, you may notice it, otherwise you don't notice it. But in the sensory system, all that is recorded. So without knowing why, without actually mentally or intellectually articulating it, you just don't like to go to certain places. Maybe it's the smell, maybe it's the vision, maybe it's the sounds, maybe it's just the energy there, whatever it is, your four dimensions of karma, physical, mental, emotional and energetic karma is always building an elaborate and spectacular web for you. This web is not to trap you, this web is to make life automatic so that many things you don't have to think, just like that you can do it because it's in your karmic memory. But unfortunately, because people are getting so identified with many things that they do, and they start choosing what is good and what is bad. The moment you say this is good, you will develop certain affinity for it. The moment you say this is bad, you will develop certain aversion for it. Both in affinity and aversion, you will get stuck. Now you built an elaborate web and you got stuck in your own web. This is the fate of karma for most people. Karma is the most dynamic way to exist. It simply literally means you are the maker of your life. For you to be the maker of your life, without your neurological system functioning to your commands, you will never be the maker of your life. You will always be an accidental life. So if you move away from being an accidental life, the people who are experiencing unnecessary levels of anxiety and fear and things on a daily basis, a whole lot of medical professionals are going about saying, these are normal things, you're anxious, it's normal, even I am also anxious. This is not the way to make a human being. A human being is capable of being above this. We are considered as human beings We did not use the word being for any other creature. We don't call an elephant being, a tiger being, an ant being or something like this. We only called humans as beings because you are capable of being. That means you are capable of conscious existence. That means you are capable of using every faculty that you have the way you want, not in reaction to what happens around you, but by conscious response.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, Sadhguru. Dr. Verma, you have been a big proponent of compassion and empathy, and I think you talked to me about how to teach the medical students, make this as a routine thing. So you had a question about that, right?
Well, Dr. Bala, thanks for reminding me, asking me to tell you about neurological aspects of pain, what others are feeling, and how I'm responding. I feel your pain. The oft-repeated statement given by politicians and many more people. And then we also talk about compassion. In empathy, you feel the pain. There's a mirroring of the same neurological circuits in the brain occurs what the sufferer gets. It's an interpersonal reverberation. It's like a Wi-Fi. That person sends an impulse, you receive it. There are mirror neurons. Same expressions are created. Same pain circuits are involved, but nothing else, not more than that. So it is a negative emotion generating another negative emotion. Now, beyond that, if somebody goes out and tries to help, give them love, warmth, this becomes a compassion. Here, a negative emotion is being converted into a positive emotion. No doubt, neurological underpinnings are different. Here, the pain circuit is not activated. They understand it, so that system of understanding is there, same TPJ. And there is one more area, medial frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex. This starts a motivation for the reward circuit to act and go. And this gives rise to his own satisfaction, definitely, but at the same time that act releases the person's suffering. So it changes, so empathy hurts, compassion heals. Empathy is a feeling, compassion is an action. This is one particular thing which we want to say. Empathy is not only emotional aspect, there is a cognitive aspect also, which the doctors have. fMRI studies have shown that we are able to control our reaction to the pain, others' pain. Very clearly, this has been shown that we may only stimulate when seeing somebody is in pain, or when there is a picture of pain, only the medial prefrontal cortex is stimulated, not the painful area which others will get it. Now, important thing is the interpersonal relationship is the pillar of the society. The medical profession has been now lately being teased about being too technical, there's a compassionate crisis. This oft-quoted statement, 2 buses collided, 3 people died, 55 survived. Those people who survived, they were asked, what do you recall of the incident? The impact and the, sorry to say being a doctor, and the non-compassionate, non-empathetic approach of the medical care providers. The studies have been there, one after another, where it shows that it's a Harvard study only, in the Health Wire it was quoted. 50% of the people on survey found that the doctors was not being compassionate. Similar study also found that patients, 2/3 of the patients found the doctors were not using compassion, empathy towards them. If this is sort of story which is going on, why? Why it is happening? Surgeons use less than 1% in their communications. And the worst thing was a study which showed that in the ICU patients, 74% of the healthcare providers were not compassionate. And the word was 2/3 of the patients having consultation for end-of-life consultation, they did not respond. They were not in a compassionate flavor. Why is it happening? Important study, there is a Jefferson scale of empathy. It has been used differently. Medical students themselves, it was found reflecting the society's Why? Because the students also come from society. Medical students, 17 out of 80 studies found that empathy score was going down. Then, it was after this study was published, American Medical Association included compassion in their courses, some of the courses somewhere at different places. In India, it's not included anywhere, even in the Code of Medical Ethics, compassion, empathy, what to talk of the medical curriculum. It has been found by Jefferson scale only. Those who are dealing with medical side means family medicine, internal medicine, other these things, non-technical subjects, they are more empathetic. And the empathy score was less in those who are, I'm sorry for saying so, Bala, dealing with the technology like radiology, pathology, and anesthesiology. But then I find that you must be an exception out of them. It's not all. But then scores are there. Why people are becoming that? Not only training, not only that, the workload, there's a condition term known as burnout, physician burnout. And in which neurology and urology top the score. Is when people are having emotional exhaustion, they're not finding themselves capable of getting what they deserve. They're getting disconnected with the patients. That's why this is happening. Why? If you find out from them, the various reasons given, one of the main reasons given was very clearly, they're burdened by non-patient care work, burdened by the computer work, 40% to 38%. These are the scores they have given. Now, another interesting thing was very clear. If they spend only 12% of their time with the patient, 40% of time is on the computer screen. What is important? A child was asked to draw how the doctor is, because empathy requires listening, allowing them to expand, understanding, and communicating to them. This is a medical empathy. Where a child was asked to, after doctor visit, was asked to draw doctor's face. Previously, they would have drawn white coat and stetho and smiling or serious face. But now he draws a person sitting on computer screen with his back towards the patients and front towards the computer screen on the keyboard. So that's what is happening. We are getting disconnected. Important thing which I wanted to know is not only that it should be included in the medical education curriculum, but there should be some ways of increasing. But these are all circuits with like a neuroplasticity. When can it be improved upon by yogic sadhanas or yogic methods or some other ways of life? No doubt, curriculum will only give one idea about it. But we have to practice it. We have to inculcate it. We have to improve the social culture so that less of the litigations, less of the lack of trust.
Thank you, Dr. Verma. I think Sadhguru had something to say about that.
Yes, please.
Namaskaram. It's good that Dr. Bala doesn't have any empathy because he usually puts people to sleep, and if he also sleeps with them, it'll be a disaster. So he remains aloof from the sleeping people, which is a very good thing. Anyway, see, between empathy and compassion, there is a little bit of a thing to see. There's another aspect to it. See, compassion is a consequence of a certain way of being. Now, we trying to practice a consequence will lead to artificial behavior, which will lead to more stress and tension for the person who has to act compassionate. Acting loving, acting compassionate, acting joyful are always more stressful than not being joyful, compassionate or loving. So, let's not talk about compassion as a practice. Compassion is a natural… See, the way we look at the word compassion itself is, compassion means it's an all-inclusive passion. That means you're passionate about everything. So this is something, this is the fundamental aspect of yoga in the sense, the word yoga means union. That means you obliterate the lines of your individuality to a point where your experience of life is so fused with everything around you. What is you and what is somebody and what is somebody else, who is yours, who is not yours, these lines are blurred for you. Because of this, it doesn't matter, the air that you breathe, you're absolutely involved with it, you're walking on the street, you're involved with everything that is around you. Let us say for the sake of context, let's say what is it that people usually involve themselves most? Maybe if they're romantically involved with somebody, they're very involved, or their children, they're very involved, husband, wife may be very involved. Some people these days are more involved with their dogs. Whatever is their involvement, whatever is the highest level of involvement they have in their life, if they show the same level of involvement with everything without exercising their sense of discrimination or discernment from one thing to another, where I should show involvement, where I shouldn't. See, involvement and action are two different things. I'm involved with everything. This doesn't mean I'm going to perform action in every direction. I will choose my action because action costs energy, action costs time, action involves my intelligence, capability, which is always a limited resource. So action has to be judicious, but my involvement does not need any judiciousness. I can be involved with everything within myself, I can be involved with everything to the same extent. Without this indiscriminate sense of involvement, compassion will not be the product. Compassion is a natural product of indiscriminate involvement with life. You are not discriminating what is mine, what is not mine, what is important, what is not important, what is good, what is bad. Whatever you are in touch with, you're equally involved. But action is judicious because that's the only way action can be. If this happens, consequence is compassion. But if empathy happens, see, empathy means, as you described, doctor, it is literally feeling the pain. Well, they have made a lot of experiments with mice and they have found if there is pain in one animal, pain is created. The others are all feeling pain, much more pain than the one who is actually injured. So if this happens, the observations and also in life we have observed, when people feel this, that if somebody is in a state of pain or suffering and they start feeling it strongly, the first reaction is there is an aversion and they want to move away from it. So usually empathy does not breed compassion. Empathy largely breeds aversion. People initially they may be moved by it, but after some time, they don't want to be there. I know a lot of people, if somebody is sick in the house, they don't want to be in the house, they want to go away somewhere because they feel too much sickness themselves if they're around that. So, empathy is a different dimension. To be able to be empathetic in a full sense of the term and still be balanced, it will take a lot. So I wouldn't say compassion is a consequence of empathy. So compassion will come because of indiscriminate involvement. You are equally passionate about everything in your life, then compassion is a natural consequence. Namaskaram, thank you very much. I'm sorry, you're all hugely qualified people, you're allowing an ignorant person like me to talk to you. Thank you very much.
You have
Thank you so
transcendental
much,
knowledge
Sadhguru.
from above, sir. Your knowledge is from you clouds, so we are just mugging up from books and you have universal knowledge.
Thank you so much, Sadhguru, for your time, and thank you, Dr. Verma and Dr. Shah, for organizing this. We are fortunate to have Sadhguru to guide us.
On behalf of
Thank you.
Indian Academy, we thank you.
Namaskaram, thank you.
Sir, can I request you to please unmute yourself?
Yeah, now unmuted it. Thank you very much, Sadhguru. Now, I would like to have some detailed discussion or elaboration on the topic of neurobiology of happiness by no one else but by Dr. Sudhir, who, as we know, I'll like to reiterate that he is the professor director and head of department at Sterling Hospital. He is a recipient of Padma Shri and one highest in the civilian side, and on the medical side, he is a recipient of BC Roy Award, apart from the various international awards also, which he has been receiving. And on the top of that apart, he is a human being personified. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Sudeep, please tell us about him, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you. Is my slide visible?
Yes,
And am I audible?
Yes,
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 sir.
you are.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Well, that was a fantastic contemplation with Sadhguru, and I'm sure you all would have loved to listen him more and more, but this was the time that was given by him. Now, I am in the last few years quite fascinated with this topic of happiness, and the reason is very evident because all the activities of our life is centered only on one fundamental thing, and that is happiness. We all are striving for happiness, and as Aristotle put it, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and the end of human existence. The dictionary definition is a positive emotion, a persistent state of a feeling of well-being, an attitude, and a state of mind. But before we go into the neurobiology and spiritual aspects of happiness, I would like to make some statements. First of all, we are in a misconception. We must clarify we are in charge of our happiness and not anybody else. Nobody can take away your happiness. No circumstances should take away your happiness, and that is the level we have to achieve. Second, happiness is a journey, it's not a destination. There is no better time to be happy than now. Many of us have clinged ourselves to, after achieving this particular goal, I'll become happy. And in that, we lose the precious time of enjoying the journey of life. So let every moment of our life be a journey of happiness. Friends, remember pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So my talk would be divided into three parts. What is the problem? Why we are unhappy? Is there a reason? What is the cause? How do we fix that cause? And if we fix that cause, can we get really freedom from unhappiness? Yes. And this talk is taking care of not only yogic science, not only neurobiology, but also social, economic, and other aspects. So please stay with us. So, in my research and my reviewing of a lot of neurological literature, I've found that all persons fall into one of the three categories: those who are spiritually awake, those who are asleep, and those who are somewhere in the middle, so-called sattva, tamas, and rajas. Now, depending upon that, your own personal definition of happiness will depend. Whether it is pleasure that is on the body and senses based, five senses, or joy which is mind based, that is psychological, or bliss which is from the deeper consciousness. So, what is pleasure? Pleasure is happiness where you seek it from outer world, and is characterized by sensual things, instinctual things, which is transient and physiological. It is typically transient. And in spiritual language, this is tamas, those who are largely asleep. It is always perpetual, and with each senses, when you feed them, you require more and more. We want repeat and repeat, whether it is food, sex, looking at the places, listening, music, fragrance, always you want more and more. And when you don't get, this brings more perpetual unhappiness. That is the classical thing. And when you do fMRI during these kind of pleasure activities, you will find the respective area of the brain, like in doing visual activity, your visual cortex is stimulated from while listening music, your auditory cortex is stimulated, and so on. And this is transient. Typically, the neurotransmitters involved are dopamine and serotonin. Those who are in neurology, they will realize the role of dopamine is a reward molecule, and it is this circuit, nucleus accumbens and substantia nigra and VTA, and this goes to frontal cortex. And the serotonin is the companion for that, and which brings you mood and memory. So dopamine is a reward molecule, while serotonin is a molecule of memory and confidence. The next level is joy, which I was telling to Sadhguru that there are three levels. The second level is joy, where the happiness comes from inner world as well as outer world. It is more psychological rather than previous one, which was physiological. There are desires, but they are refined desires. through service to mankind, success, creativity, achievement, social interaction, earning money, recognition, spiritual practices. These all bring joy. Joy is quite human. Previous one was animal instinct. This is a human instinct. Achievements, engagement, creativity. And if you do have fMRI during these activities, different sets of brain areas stimulated. And the chemicals of joy, apart from dopamine and serotonin, they are joined with oxytocin, vasopressin, and prolactin. The third level is bliss, that is jhanan. Here the mind and all its activity reduce, and our consciousness becomes identified with universal consciousness. It's an experience of just being, permanent meditative state. Here there is no external input required. So many people have asked questions in the question answer box how this can happen, and we'll go through the quickly in next 20 minutes how we can achieve this state also. One is the mindfulness practice, observing the body and mind intentionally, letting experiences unfold from moment to moment and accepting as they are. No non-judgmental neutral awareness. Observing thoughts without getting caught up in them. Just observe. Don't try to judge or criticize them. No effort to control anything except the focus and direction of attention. This requires a huge practice. In that way, you can enter into state of meditation while you are eating, you are sitting, talking, working, whatever. And interestingly, the brain area they are stimulated during this kind of action is a very small area of PSPL or similar areas of the brain. The blissful chemicals are not from the previous set at all, but here they are endorphin, GABA, endocannabinoids, as Sadhguru was telling. And this is the complex circuitry, how you get through glutamate, you get activation of arcuate nucleus, hypothalamus, endorphins are released, or through glutamate, you activate thalamus, and the GABAs are released, which are the molecules of peace. So endocannabinoids are the bliss molecules. They are rampantly present in our system. We have to activate them through the acts of, as for example, you are running a marathon race. After a few miles, you get exhausted. But then if you continue running, the second wave comes, and that is anandamide, one of the endocannabinoids. Interestingly, when you are in a blissful state, peace is given as a package deal. So inner peace refers to a state of being mentally and spiritually at peace with enough knowledge and understanding to keep oneself strong in the face of discord or stress. Currently, we are passing through a very bad stage of corona, but still many people have become very fearful and anxious, or some people are keeping cool, and that is what we have to learn. So basically, friends, pleasure, joy, and bliss, these are the three things. Now, one may question, somebody has asked the question also, can you really measure happiness? Yes. Who would know better than neurologists and psychologists? These socioeconomists, they define, they study happiness with happiness index, GDP, human development index, etc. But we as neurologists and neuropsychologists, we do neurophysiological testing, electroencephalogram, neuropsychological testing, fMRI, PET, and SPECT. And let me tell you, the different components of happiness are found in different areas of the brain. That is, happiness does not seem to have a clearly defined neurobiological home. When people think about good events, the rostral anterior cingulate cortex and the amygdala are activated. However, when you are optimistic, the cingulate cortex gets activated. But I must mention some of the recent researches that is about the hedonic spots. Friends, this pinky spots designated here, cingulate cortex, dorsomedial, prefrontal cortex, orbital cortex, nucleus accumbens, amygdala, ventral pallidum, hypothalamus, and some of the brain deep structures. A cubic centimeter or so in humans, they are proportional to whole brain volume, if you consider that way. And these hotspots are capable of generating enhancement of liking reaction to a sensory pleasure, such as sweetness, when stimulated with opioid, endocannabinoids, other neurochemical modalities. So one of the ways to create sensory pleasure phenomena is through chemicals or through neurostimulation techniques, or even later on we'll come across deep brain stimulation, etc. So hotspots exist in the nucleus accumbens, shell, ventral pallidum, possibly other forebrain and limbic cortical regions. And this is one of the experiments given in 2015 neuroscience publication, that prolonged activation of the ventral striatum, a brain region, is directly related to the maintenance of positive emotion and reverse. So there is some answer coming up, although I want to tell you one very important fundamental message. Whatever Professor Abhita Verma showed and whatever I am showing, I must warn you that all spiritual phenomena or all personal phenomena or experiences, we can't really reduce them to mere physiological or neurophysiological or neurobiological phenomena. These are personal experiences and you can't really quantify in that manner. But neuroscience has started understanding all these things. Can we control the activation of ventral striatum? Yes, there are experiments going on. My main fundamental point why I brought up this presentation is, amongst all, we are the most miserable people as doctors. Physicians feel themselves. Dr. Verma showed about the burned out phenomena and etc. etc. Why we are not happy? So this is the second question which I'm saying there is a problem that we know, but why we are unhappy? Why there is a problem? That is the second question that we have to answer, and that right from academic stress to professional career to corporate stress and these conferences, and then you have to balance family life and then negative emotions, and then all of us want to become famous, earn money, and then we have to manage time, social media, traffic, mobile, staff management, misunderstanding, legal work, paperwork, demanding patients, caregiver stress, such pandemics, government issues, IT, GST, demonetization, and then at the top of it, we have to maintain our health, fitness, and beauty. My God, it's a very, very tough challenge. Friends, life is larger than medicine or profession or business. Why medicine? Everybody is in the order. A life is not something that you are putting a apron or coat. You are a much bigger existence. You are a father, a son, your friend, your teacher. You have so many roles to play. So neurosciences found out what are the determinant components of happiness. Well, 20% of our happiness comes from the genes, 10% comes from the circumstances, like the present circumstances, it will go away. But it does cast an aspersion over the lifetime, that particular period. 20% of happiness of the life comes from money, health, etc. But believe me, science tells us 50% of our happiness is because you are in charge of your happiness, your attitude, your behavior, your morality, your relationship management, and spirituality. This takes care of 50% of your happiness. So, friends, genes are very important. Some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. Very nice statement by Oscar. While some people bring happiness whenever they are there, like in Sadhguru's presence, we all felt quite elevated. Some people are born happy while others are born difficult. That there are reasons, there are genes. We met to ITLPR, MAOE, FA, and there's DRD2, DRD4. I had a hard time finding out all this and I put together in this one presentation. So these are different genes. DRD2 controls dopamine release, DRD4 serotonin release. We met to norepinephrine and so on, HRA with endorphin. So neuroscientists pinpoint brain regions like left prefrontal cortex corresponds to positive frame of mind. Dopamine relays information to left prefrontal cortex. People with more sensitive dopamine receptors are cheerful. Then epigenetics and happiness. Intrinsic happiness occurs naturally. Mindfulness, meditation, altruist action unlock the DNA code that produces natural happiness. Friends, you should know that there's a new thing coming up, epigenetics in the last 10 years. With the mindfulness, meditation, our good actions, thoughts, emotion, behavior, situation, we can actually unlock our DNA code, alter the gene expression, and produce happiness molecules, like as I mentioned. And that produces self-directed neuroplasticity. The good life, as I conceive, is a happy life. I do not mean that if you are good, you will be happy. I mean that if you are happy, you will be good. So next thing is circumstances. Such circumstances like COVID will pass away. We have to reassure ourselves. At the same time, we have to reduce our commitment. The more you have contacts with persons and situations, the more commitments we have, we have more unhappiness. Money, yes, important. Money produces short-term benefits. More money will not raise well-being. And this is a graph that classically shows that with increased per capita income, the happiness level actually does not increase. In fact, after some time, it starts reducing. So money can bring happiness and security as well as comfort and pleasure. It can bring improved standard of living and education, but more money corrupts, success corrupts. They may take away morality, relationship, health, bliss, and peace. They are impermanent, so we need to balance. One is to choose between success and bliss. Success is something which you take from the system, while bliss is something which you are imparting to the system. That is the shortest definition I can give. So at some point of in life, you have it to choose one way at the crossroad takes you to more pleasure, success is more money, more fame, award, achievement, while one smaller road, less travel road takes you to godliness, spirituality, bliss, and peace. You have to change the drive from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And there, how do you enjoy the journey of life and happiness? So 5 activities of health, 5 relationships to care for, 5 hobbies, 5 medical interventions, 5 philosophical laws, 5 virtues, 5 mental processes, and 5 spiritual practices. Friends, we are all human beings practicing doctors. We can't do every day, we can't elevate ourselves to straightway yoga and all that. We can do partly daily for some activities, but how do we do that? So distribute your one day of 24 hours into 3 parts, 8 hours of work, 7 hours of sleep, and 9 hours of 3 HFS. What is 3 HFS? 3 hours, 1 hour health, hygiene, that is the routine activities, and 1 hour in hobby. 1 hour for family, one for friends and contacts, and one for faith, and 1 hour for service to humanity, for your own soul, and one is for smiling, etc. So take care of your health, do right thing, do eat properly, do exercise, get enough sleep, and use good food to increase your dopamine level like apple, beet, cucumber, green vegetables, or serotonin like bananas, or do light stretching exercise, soothing music. If you want to increase endorphin, eat spicy food like hot chili peppers or complex pasta like thing, enough sleep, walking. So don't drink, things which will stimulate you. Do resistance training exercise, venting with friends, smile every day, laugh frequent. So these are the cartoons that I brought to simplify the things. This is a roadmap for happiness, which everybody can do from that chart that I gave. Love abundantly. Mother Teresa used to say, if you spend your life in judging people, then when will you love them? So love them. And when you love, there is a reward in the rostral midbrain area. There is a part activated which increases parasympathetic input. Medically also, we can take care of your unhappiness if it is due to anxiety, psychosis, or depression related things with counseling, mood elevators. Friends, happiness actually improves all psychosomatic disorder to some or more extent and lifestyle disorders. And also treatment of pain. And as I was contemplating, functional neurosurgery, DBS, and neurostimulation techniques or artificial intelligence might solve the problem of suffering to some extent, but not the deep level suffering. And there can be some sprays available in future. We can do gene editing also. So things to be adapted. Another thing is a relationship, married life, children, relation with parents, in-laws, friends, etc. Happy married life is an oxymoron to some people, but those who are lucky like me have wonderful balanced married life. And you have to make your children happy with your time, with education, knowledge, culture, and wisdom. Do good hobbies like music, dance, art, creativity, traveling, reading, gardening, grooming, whatever feels. Music is the medicine of the mind. And those who want to do leadership and joyful activity, they have to develop temperance, wisdom, justice, love, etc. 5 virtues are most important: gratitude, appreciation, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, and acceptance. I'm just finishing next 5 7 minutes. 5 virtues are most important. Be grateful and appreciate people from the core of their heart. These 2 virtues, along with forgiveness, actually will change your aura and bring lots of abundance in your life. So forgive people. They unnecessarily occupy space in your brain and heart. So forgive them. And compassion has been lot talked about by Dr. Verma, my learned colleague, as well as Sadhguruji. So compassion is most important. Friends, ultimately, what is happiness? Happiness is a state of mind. Happiness is not something you can buy from outside by your five senses or create with joy. No. Actual real happiness is not something that happens that money or power can buy. It is only by controlling our inner experience that we can become happy. And happiness cannot be reached by consciously searching. What is the root cause of miseries? As all the spiritual leaders of India, may it be Mahavir, Buddha, Krishna, Ram, everybody said the same thing. The root cause of miseries are your aspirations, your desires, thoughts, emotions, perversion, your attachment, hatred, the mind wavering between past and future. Past is your guilt and future is your anxiety, as Sadhguru was telling. Ego, attitude, and avidya. These is the root of your miseries. And if we are able to control this, we can certainly take charge of our happiness. And that's why you have to take care of our mental processes, attachment, thoughts, desires, emotion, attitude. Now, unless we know this, you don't require yoga or big things to do this. You have to understand the philosophy behind this and look every thought, every word, and every action that you do, and you will start understanding where we are wrong. Thoughts are what? We are what we think. All that we arise from our thoughts. And with our thoughts, we make our world. My world is because of my thoughts. Dr. Verma's world is because of his thoughts. So our world is our thoughts. And we can now actually map our emotions and thoughts and things in your SPAC machine, which is a very important tool of neuroscience. So next is attitude. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. So friends, coming to the last part of the discussion, we have discussed physical, social, moral, mental things, but the spiritual commitment is equally important. The people, there was a study showed that if you are highly committed to spirituality, you can really become more happy. And it is a prayer scan. Before doing prayer and after doing prayer, they could actually measure that there was a lot of improvement in the blood flow in the limbic system, hypothalamus, and therefore their improvement in the parasympathetic output, meaning thereby you are at more peace, etc. Friends, I have a request. Do me a little favor. Search your own self within yourself. The most important, profound statement by Rumi. Meditation is something which is excellent tool. And it is not that difficult. Believe me, I have been doing meditation for last 25 years and it has brought so much excellence, grace, and abundance in my life. It's a simpler technique. Start with simple techniques and go deeper and deeper. And I'm thankful to my friend Andrew Newberg. We had done a lot of work together, and this was a neural circuitry of meditation that was published after the seminal paper of 2002, 3, etc. You can go through Google, browse Andrew Newberg and his colleagues. Now, what they found that during meditation there is something fundamental happens. Before meditation, if you see the brain scan SPECT, there is this SPECT shows blood flow. The blood flow increases during meditation by 40%. So 30 minutes or 45 minutes of meditation can increase your prefrontal output, cerebral blood flow. And you know what is that? It is intelligence, higher memory, judgment, executional capacity, whatever we are as a human being higher than any other animal is because of the prefrontal cortex. We will all agree. And in meditation, that part becomes highly activated. And the second important thing that happens is the parietal area. The left parietal area, you get minimum blood flow. The blood flow is shunned during meditation. And as you know, this is the area which brings you contextuality with the surroundings, your ego, your attitude, your orientation to time, place, and person manifest through this particular point. And Daniel Newberg showed with different neurochemical and other parameters also how it is all changed during meditation. And symbolic representation of self was represented by fMRI studies. And friends, this study by Lazar et al. Found that actually meditation experiences associated with increased cortical thickness. They had seen in autopsy studies of people after death doing meditation for prolonged hours. So, friends, I'm towards the end of the presentation. Meditation improves your attitude, your personality. It improves compassion, sociability, tolerance, improves your stress fighting capacity. And attitude is something we cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is to play on the only string we have, that is our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so is with you. We are in our charge of our attitude. So friends, meditation changes the attitude of a person. So we have seen that there is a problem. We are all suffering. We are unhappy that there is a cause. We have tried to see in small presentation, and we saw that there are ways. And if you follow these ways, right from health management, relationship management, attitude management, your management of how do you change your mental processes, how do you spiritual practices, and etc. etc. So the formula of happiness that I brought for you: stop comparing, stop expecting, stop criticizing. This is the roadmap. Start sharing, start helping, start loving. Give and forgive, count blessing, enjoy every moment. Learn music, dance, art, read great books, do sport activities, do gardening, appreciate people, thank them heartfully. As I thank you all to have remained present till this time. I thank Sadhguru and the whole team. I thank Amitabh ji and whole IAN, President sir, and all for giving this opportunity to me and my team. Learn creativity, be with nature, enjoy traveling, accept limitation, do yoga daily, do exercise, control attachment, control anger, ego, avoid greed, jealous. Friends, we can do that. We can control our anger with a lot of practice, control our ego, watch them, avoid greed, avoid jealousy, do prayers. Don't compare yourself with others, do prayers, do chanting, and meditate. So friends, happiness is nowhere outside. Happiness is inward and not outward. So it does not depend on what we have, but on what we are. So these are the different references that I used. I'm much thankful to all of you, and I want you all to remain safe, stay home, stay safe, stay blessed, and try to minimize your exposure to patient. This is a difficult area, and pray for the humanity, where all of us survive well and come out from these difficult times. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there are some questions, but there is some. Dr. Amitabh Verma,
Yes,
can you please take?
well, there are many, but the question is that we are running short of time. First, I would like to make a comment. I was going to ask you a question, but there's a comment.
All right.
There's a one more type of path to get happiness, is to have this sort of a good lecture from you, which has really shown, which has deepened the path of happiness. I'm very delighted to have such a thing. But now, in fact, all those who want to have a question should join our WhatsApp group of the Contemplative Neurology subsection. First, become a member and join the subgroup, the WhatsApp group. We'll be able to answer them directly and as and when it is required. Now, the time has come to take the person who has been an energy behind many of the activities of this subgroup is to have a comment from the President-elect, Dr. Nirmal Surya. Yes, Nirmal.
Yes, sir. 1 second. After Dr. Nirmal Surya, I think Professor IMS Soni wants to give some comment.
Sure. We will.
Allow him to speak a few.
Of course. So, yes, Dr. Surya, please.
Dr. Surya, my friend, please come. Unmute yourself. Unmute, sir. Dr. Surya, unmute, please.
Yeah, that's it.
So first of all, thank you very much, both Professor Amitabh Verma and Sudhir White, to start your first session. I think Contemplative Neurology, the first session, and you started with a bang, sixer. So that's how you have begun, and I think this is a very, very important subsection, and it is different. And you two people are also different because your thinking, thoughts, and arguments are very different than the normal neurologist, and the way you practice also is very different. I have been knowing very closely to you. So this subsection, which is a part of Indian Academy of Neurology, which we had 31 subsections, and we promote all the various activities, including once in a month session from you people for both scientific as well as for the social, for the public. So we will continue this dialogue every year. Now, there are few things which I wanted to say. One is, I want to thank you that Sadhguru gave us a wonderful thoughts of his knowledge, which is added upon your scientific work. Both of you have done scientific work, both of you have done study. And the important thing is, in spite of Sadhguru being so knowledgeable, he kept on saying that I'm the ignorant in front of you, which is such a humble person, and how he sees the world, and look at it and respect the scientists as we are scientists. So my suggestion to you would be, why don't we start some sort of a study under your subsection to add upon. So I know that you have done the work on meditation, but the meditation work is not done in many of the neurological disorder where there is no neurological treatment.
Correct.
Or yoga. I know that yoga has been accepted in world over. I know that there are an institute of yoga in US which are only treated HIV 10 years ago. So why not you people take it something to do some scientific study and bring out that there is this thing. You could use the P300, you could use the EEG, Sudhir Bhai has done the SPAC, you could use the fMRI, and bring these scientific facts and the base for what you are thinking and give it to the world. I would also suggest you, as Amitabh, you talked about the burnout of neurologists in the country. Why don't your subsection take a survey of all the neurologists and understand how much burnout they have seen during this 1 year of COVID? At least you could take this survey and come out with a scientific paper and present it during some time in the conference in November of Indian Academy. So these are some of my suggestions. You started, the beginning has been very good. Convert it into not only a spiritual or this thing, but a scientific mode, and help the world learn that there is a science behind whatever we are doing. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Surya. Thank you. Now we are waiting for Dr. Sani to hear from him, because he has been waiting for quite some time to talk. Dr. Sani, please. Is he here? Because his message is here. Bhavesh, is he there somewhere? No, I'm not able to see him anywhere. Are you able to do that?
No, he's not in the participants.
He's not in the participants? No, he did put a question.
He has left.
He has left. Okay, fine. So that's all right. I think then the credit for closing this session has to go to Dr. Sudhir. So please close this. Thing has to come to an end.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Verma sir, for being the person who actually conceived the whole idea. And I am also thankful to the current team of Indian Academy of Neurology, headed by no less than a person, Dr. J.M.K. Murthy, President, Dr. U. Meenakshi Sundaram, Dr. Nirmal Surya, the Executive Committee, and all other people who have taken interest. I'm here standing with my folded hands to thank for the profuse help that they have given and allowed us to do this wonderful webinar. I am also thankful to all the attendees who were there on Zoom, some people were on YouTube, some people were watching on Facebook link, etc., etc. So we are very grateful to all of them. Most of all, most grateful to Sadhguru for his divine presence, the eloquent, wonderful way he answered the question, intellectually, logically, rationally, at the same time spiritually. My God, is a profound knowledge. And as Dr. Surya said, And as I was also talking to him in the contemplation part, that if neuroscience, which has a strength, gets the wisdom from yogic sciences or the ancient Indian spiritual context, so I think will be more beneficial. And that is a distinct advantage that Indian neurologists have got. And we will certainly take forward this task. There are a lot of great luminaries in the question answer. Here I saw them. Question Lakshmi Narasimha is there, Professor. So many people I saw who are asking. So I salute all of them, but because of constraint of time, we are not able to take. But we'll answer your questions once we get across in the WhatsApp group. And once again, my personal request in this Corona time, and my prayer also, take care of yourself, stay safe, stay well, and exercise all possible care for you, your family, and your loved ones. God bless us all. Thank you very much, and we will keep on meeting at such occasions. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And of course, I must thank Bhavesh and Mansi for giving excellent support for the.
Two cheers for
What a
them.
wonderful.
3 cheers for them. 3 cheers. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.